we make decisions and we decide to act upon certain things or not act upon them because of the way we feel about them or how we feel at the time. And if you hear otherwise, if you hear somebody say, you know what, you should just make a rational decision, and you should have all the stats and hear all the numbers, hear all the facts and figures, and this is really how you need to make your decision. If anyone ever tells you or read anything like that, just know that either A, they don't fully understand what motivates people, or secondly, they're not telling you the whole story. Let me just kind of give you some examples in terms of how this actually plays out. I'm talking about this whole idea of certain aspects of your 24-day challenge that you have found maybe a little undesirable, so you either avoid doing them or you find a creative way to avoid it. And really the bottom line is really how you feel about certain things. Let me kind of give you an example of how this all plays out in terms of how we make decisions based on how highly we make our decisions based on emotions. And you know what? There's plenty of research out there, as far as psychology, advertising, sales, science, medicine, the whole gamut of how people really do play and really make their decisions based on how they're feeling and how they feel towards certain things. For example, let's say you're in bed. Chances are you stay in bed longer than you really should because it feels cozy, it feels good. Or on the other side of the spectrum, maybe you stay in bed longer because you feel absolutely horrible. Okay, you wake up with some kind of a headache or a sniffle or something like that, so you feel horrible. How about the car that you drive? You probably chose that car for several reasons. The color, the features in it. It makes you feel comfortable. It makes you feel safe. Come on, admit it. When you saw that car in the showroom, it just looked absolutely alluring. How about you ladies? Ladies out there, maybe not all of you watching this do wear makeup, but at the end of the day, when you get ready to go out the door, you're putting on the makeup because you have to? Or maybe you might scare some people if you don't? Well, maybe, but at the end of the day, as I understand it, you put makeup on because it makes you feel better. It makes you feel more appealing. It makes you feel more attractive. And guys, how about you guys? Us guys, the reason we wear deodorant is because, well, let's just put it this way. It would be bad news if we didn't. And how about the person that you married? The person that you're in a relationship with. Are you married to that person, or are you in a relationship with a person because they fulfill some kind of a cerebral need? Maybe, but hopefully if the person is with you that's watching this video with you, that's not the answer you're giving. It's because you enjoy that person. You love spending time with them. You enjoy being around them. It's also very likely that you chose to stay in the career that you're presently in because you still feel like you're making a contribution, you're making a difference in the world, and you feel fulfilled. Now, on the other hand, as far as what's undesirable, let's say that the phone rings, your cell phone, or you have a landline, and you avoid answering the phone call, because it might be a debt collector, and that doesn't feel very good. Or maybe you're in sales, and you're kind of avoiding that phone call because you might get rejected, and that doesn't feel good at all. How about the idea of joining the gym? Maybe you don't join the gym because you're embarrassed about your weight. Here's a news flash. So are over half of the people that go to the gym. Or people that avoid going to the dentist because... Or maybe people that work 2 or more jobs because they want to avoid the feeling of pain. The pain associated with what? Losing their house, or the disgrace of losing their house, or not being able to make the car payment, or maybe even losing the car, or just not being able to provide for their family. Or you brush your teeth and take a shower and bathe and change the sheets occasionally because you feel cleaner, you feel better. And if you didn't, you'd feel absolutely gross. You guys get the picture in terms of how emotions play into how we decide and why we act on certain things? So what's this have to do with your 24-day challenge? absolutely everything. The reason you do certain things during your 24-day challenge and the reason you avoid certain things during your 24-day challenge is because you find them either desirable or undesirable. And what I want you to do right now is I want you to hit the pause button and take 30 seconds to write down the things that you have found undesirable. Well, how do you know they're undesirable? Because you avoid doing them. It's because of the way you feel towards them. So take 30 seconds, hit the pause button on this video, and I want you to identify the 1, 2, or whatever several things that you find about your 24-day challenge to be undesirable. Hit the pause button. We'll talk in about 30 seconds. Okay, we're back. So now, in this next few moments, what I want you to do is I want you to hit the pause button again on this video, and I want you to write down, over the next 30 seconds, you've probably identified 2 or 3 things, or whatever it is, and you have found them to be less than desirable. How do you know? Because you're not doing them consistently or correctly or with any coachability. So what I want you to do is, next to those things that you've written down on that piece of paper, I want you to write down the feelings that you've associated with those things that you've written down. What feelings did you or do you associate those things with? Those things that are in your 24-day challenge. Okay, so hit the pause button and let's talk in about 30 seconds, okay? All right, so we're back, and I want to share with you just a little bit brief experience of what we're talking about here. Several years ago, in fact, way back as far as I can remember, let's just go back to middle school. When I was in middle school, I started the whole habit of running and exercising and that sort of thing. Why? Because I associated that whole thing with pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Okay, one of the things that really inspired me back in the day was that I aspired to be an Olympian. Well, obviously, I never became an Olympian, but nevertheless, I associated working out and running with something I just really enjoyed. And I continued to do that all through high school. I continued to do that all through college and continued the early part of my marriage. But somehow, something started to happen. I began to associate running with pain. Why? Because my knees started to hurt when I started running, and it was painful. So every time I thought of running, I associated with pain. Now, mind you, as much as I love, and one of the reasons I loved running is because of the way it made me feel. And, you know, I tried doing different things, but I took a break from running for well over 10 years because it was just too painful. I tried everything. I tried, you know, substituting that particular exercise with bicycling or swimming, which I didn't have a lot of access to, pools and that sort of thing. And furthermore, I wasn't that great of a swimmer, and I tried ellipticals and other low-impact stuff, and nothing was doing it. And I just wasn't getting that feeling. I just kind of lost that love and feeling over exercise, and so I got pretty discouraged, and I became inconsistent, and eventually I stopped, and that's when I started gaining a lot of weight. And so roll the clock forward several years later, as in like the last 2 years, I just felt this need, or felt compelled to start running again. But how was I to go about that? How was I going to take something that I associated with, you know, with pain, literally, to something that was undesirable to something that was more desirable, something that I really wanted to do? Well, first of all, I had to develop an emotionally compelling reason. Ever hear of that before? Okay, so I had to figure out why in the world did I want to get back into running, besides the fact that I just had this kind of like physical, physiological need to run. Again, I wasn't getting the results that I wanted to from the other type of exercises that I was doing. So I just felt compelled. I wanted to get back into running. So I had to come up with something that was emotionally compelling, that was somehow going to get me through this whole pain thing that I was associating running with. And so I'm not going to get into a lot of details, but one of the things that got me emotionally involved, or wanted me to, actually gave me an emotionally compelling reason to get back into running, was the whole idea of getting and staying healthy for my grandkids. Now, I don't know how soon that's going to happen. My kids just got married not too long ago, and so they're not even thinking about kids, but I get that. But nevertheless, I wanted to be that grandpa that was active, and my kids, my grandkids would have to literally work hard to keep up with Grandpa. I wanted to be the fun Grandpa, the energetic Grandpa, and the last thing I wanted to be was the Grandpa that was hanging out under the shade of a tree in a wheelchair, and I'm just kind of waving to my grandkids, and somebody else is swinging them on the swing. And so that was enough for me, among other things, but certainly that was an emotionally compelling reason for me to get going. So now, once I figured out why I wanted to do this, then the how actually began to fall in place. And so here's some of the things that I started to do with this whole thing of getting back into running. And one of the things I started doing is the whole idea was because back when I used to run in college and high school and even middle school it was all about speed. How fast could I, shave my time? How fast could I run this mile? And how fast could I do this particular route? And it was always about speed, and so consequently everything was just kind of a blur to me. Well, I decided that I was going to start off walking. You imagine that, right? I was going to slow it down. And I found that to actually be, with the whole idea of eventually jogging and so forth. So I actually started enjoying the whole idea of walking. The other thing I started to do was, I think when I started running it was actually the beginning of summer. And so I wanted to avoid the heat, and so I would go out at dark 30 before the sun actually came up and it really got uncomfortable. So I started running when temperatures were cool. Again, another aspect of my running started to become a little more enjoyable. I slowed it down. I was running early in the morning, and I was just really enjoying it. The other thing that I started doing was I started to pay attention to everything that I was thankful for, that I was thankful to God for. I would be, walking, and I would be thankful for, hey, you know what, the ability to walk. How about that? And then I would hear the birds chirping, and I would just, breathe in the smell, the scent of blossoms, or, the trees rustling, or whatever it was. So I became really attuned to basically everything around me and everything that I was thankful for, everything that I was surrounded by. I was thankful for my wife, my family, my health, the home that I'm living in, and my church. And basically started listening to music. I would literally plug in my headset, and I would play some tunes that would just make me feel good. I mean, hey, you know what? When you go to the gym or whatever you're doing, or maybe you're in the car, you're driving along, and you listen to some tunes, come on. You and I listen to music and we sing along because it just makes us feel a certain way. And so those are some of the things that I started doing, that I began to associate the whole idea of running and jogging. All right, so now what I want you to do is I want you to hit the pause button. I want you to take a look at those things that you have found to be undesirable about the challenge, and the feelings, the less than desirable feelings that you have towards them, and how can you change them? How can you change the undesirable feelings that you have towards those things in the challenge to make them more desirable? So maybe it could be a matter of just plugging in some music. Music that you like, music that kind of gets you going, gets you energized, basically changes your state. Or it could be something as simple as joining the gym or going to the gym with a friend that you really like and enjoy hanging out with. Or maybe you need to change your speech patterns or the way you talk about that particular aspect of your 24-day challenge that you have found to be undesirable. All right, so hit the pause button and take 2 minutes to write down how you can make something that's less than desirable or undesirable, make it more desirable. Okay, we're back. So I'm going to wrap this up, and chances are the reason you've stayed with your 24-day challenge as long as you have is because you have found more of it to be desirable than undesirable. And for example, you have found that maybe you love Spark and you love the way it makes you feel. It makes you feel energized. It helps you stay focused and all of those great things and how it makes you feel. So with that, listen, challengers, proud of you. Keep going at it and slam on. We'll talk to you later, okay?